All right. Second service, so my people. I said to first service that I'm not a morning person, so they like so impressed me because if I was not on staff, I probably wouldn't show up for service. So it's so great to be here. We know that you could be many places. A lot of people making their way downtown for Peyton Manning, who, I love my husband, but Peyton Manning, it's a good day. He's sad it's getting retired, but it's all good. As Justin said, we have been in this series a couple weeks ago. Justin and I team taught as we launched this series, The God I Wish You Knew, on our 1-year anniversary. And we've been talking about these different character traits of God. And we kicked it off talking about that He is a God who gives new beginnings that are not sustained through our circumstances, are not sustained through our faith, but that God gives us new beginnings. And we talked about that we have this God that not only does He make all things new, but He's a God who provides. That when we worry, it's this invitation to pray. And then last week, Justin talked about, I wish you knew a God who guides. That through the power of the Holy Spirit, God leads us in the everyday parts of our lives. And so today I wanted to conclude this whole series talking about transformation, right? Because all of us want a little bit of transformation in our life. And I thought, what better person to just kind of launch us into this whole idea of transformation than my friend Matt. So take a look at the screens.
Matt, come on up, buddy! All right, how's everybody? Good. Now, as your father probably told you, my name is Matt Foley, and I am a motivational speaker. Now, let's get started by letting me give you a little bit of a scenario of what my life is all about. First off, I am 35 years old, I am divorced, and I live in a van down by the river. Now, you kids are probably saying to yourselves, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get the world by the tail and wrap it around and pull it down and put it in my pocket. Well, I'm here to tell you that you're probably going to find out as you go out there that you're not going to amount to jack squat.
There you go. If you learn anything this morning, I hope is that you feel inspired by Matt, that we will amount to nothing. But no, here's the deal. We all have something that, if we're honest, that we wish we could change about ourselves. Maybe for some of us, we wish we could change our waistline. Maybe we wish we could change our laugh. If y'all have heard me laugh, it's ridiculous. I've prayed. I've even asked Justin if I could go get hypnotized, get rid of it. It scares people when I laugh. Maybe for you, you always wish you were really smart. You wanted to be a straight-A student. Maybe for you, you always wish that you were athletic, like you were that person, and you have a hard time just carrying your backpack down the hallway, right? We all have these things that we wish we could change about ourselves. Well, a little unknown fact about me is that I am truly dyslexic. And there's all kinds of dyslexia. My dyslexia plays in the form of how I see and oftentimes how I read words. And so I don't switch my letters around, but oftentimes when I'm spelling, 98% of the time, I said 99%, that was a total lie, it's more like 98, I spell correctly, but the words never look right. And so I drive my family crazy. I will say, hey, how do you spell? And I'll spell it, and they're like, Mom, that's right. I'm like, hey, make sure, because if I spell it wrong, someone's going to tell me I spell it wrong, and then I get embarrassed, and then I have to tell them, I'm dyslexic. And so it gets me in trouble. In fact, a couple years ago, I was telling a family, kind of distant family member, Merry Christmas, and I spelled their name wrong. I used an I instead of a Y, and I messed it up. I really hurt their feelings, and then they told me how I'd hurt their feelings, and then I told them, listen, I'm truly dyslexic. I'm probably going to do it again, and they defriended me and really haven't talked to me since. True story. I'm not even joking. It gets me in trouble. So a couple weeks ago, when Justin and I launched into this whole topic of the God I Wish You Knew, I was passionately sharing about the story found in John chapter 5. And maybe you recall, I was talking about the man who was sitting on the porch near the pool of Bethesda, which I've said Bethesda before. There is a school locally that's named Bethesda. But in my passion to read it, I just saw the word, and out of my mouth came Bethsaida. And so if you rewatch, go back and rewatch the message. Justin is sitting next to me, and his face is like, and I didn't even know I said it wrong. So because my family is so compassionate about my dyslexia, my husband decided to put a 30-second clip together of me saying Bethsaida, 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 and then he sent it to our whole family. And they just made fun of me. It's just like, whatever. I say, that's how you say it in Spanish. I think it was just like in me. But I mean, there's these parts of us that all of us wish that we could change. The parts of ourselves that we are convinced that will never change. And I think when we talk about transformation, kind of our guard goes up because we know that there are areas in our life that we feel like will never change. And so today, I wish you knew a God who transforms hearts. And he not only transforms hearts, but he transforms the hearts of communities that change the heart of the world. And I think if we're honest, we believe that God transforms hearts, but there's part of our heart where we feel like it will never change. And something we've been saying throughout this whole series is that how you view God is the most important thing about you. How you view God is the most important thing about you because it tells you how you should live your life. In fact, our view of God shapes the posture from which we live our lives. If you believe that God is a judgmental God, you probably live with a posture of judgment. If you believe your view of God is that he's always disappointed in you, you probably live a life defeated. And so your view of God is so important because it shapes our posture. And so my question to you today is, what is your posture? Are you living from a place of joy and gratitude? A posture of like, I get to do this? Or do you live from a posture of defeat, a posture of anger, a posture of confusion? And what I want to talk about is this passage found in Romans chapter 12, where the author Paul is really giving us this roadmap that I think kind of quantifies what it means to not only have heart transformation, but this struggle that we have to continually transform our hearts. And so we pick it up in verse 1 of chapter 12. It says, "And so, dear brothers and sisters," talking to all of us, "I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all that he's done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him. Don't copy the behaviors and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect." Now, I've seen this passage spoken on many times, and oftentimes it has this tone of one of like thumbing you down. Like God's saying, stop, copying the behavior, stop sinning, and just be perfect, just be pleasing, just be good. And what Paul is saying, no, you're missing the context. He's saying that this kind of heart transformation, it's sacrificial. It's sacrificial obedience. It's you leaning into God and asking God to change your heart. He's pleading, verse 2, don't copy the behaviors and the custom of this world. In other words, don't get caught up in the external that you miss out on the internal. We make these huge assumptions about everybody's life, right? Because everybody has got it better than we do. Like, they have the better job, they have the better spouse, they have the better friends, they have the better income. We take this posture of comparison, and what happens is that we start copying in the behavior of those around us and in our culture, not out of a willingness to sin, because some of it has nothing to do with morality or sin issues. But we think if I can just copy my neighbor's behavior, if I can just copy my best friend's behavior, if I can just copy my pastor's behavior, then I can start living the life that I think they live. And when God says, when you do that, you miss out on what he says is this good and pleasing, perfect will. Not your good and perfect, but his good and perfect pleasing will. It goes on to say that God is who transforms your heart by the way you think. He says, let me change your perspective. And so how do you know where you are on the pendulum of this? You realize that when you live from a posture of have to, everything is a chore, right? You wake up and you're like, I have to go to work today. You wake up and you're like, I have to deal with these children. Jesus, take the wheel, right? Like, I have to deal with that neighbor. If I have to talk to that neighbor one more time, like it's always like, I have to. And what God is saying, lean into me. The sacrificial leaning in starts to change your posture. Why? Because when you lean into God, you begin to know his heart. And when you get to know the heart of God, you have a clear understanding of his heart for you, the will he has for your life. Heart transformation begins when we know the heart of God. Easy to say, hard to do. You see, heart transformation says, I get to. Will it be sacrificial? Absolutely. Is it hard? You bet it is. But when you choose this type of leaning in, when you choose this type of heart transformation, your heart doesn't just change, but the people around you. And so then he goes on to say in verse 3, because of this privilege and authority God has given me, this is for everyone. Paul's not just saying just him, that when we have the knowledge that we have this God who has a perfect and good will for us, it changes us. And he says, but I have this warning for you. I give each of you this warning. Don't think you are better than you really are. Hello? I had to read that again. I was like, that hurt. Read that again. Don't think you are better than you really are. Be honest in your evaluation of yourselves, measuring yourselves by the faith that God has given us. See, this is so important, this self-evaluation, because when we talk about self-esteem, the majority of us live in the extreme of self-esteem, right? There are those of us who we struggle with such low self-esteem, we think too little of ourselves. And then there are those of us who think a lot of ourselves and have a false confidence that we're amazing. It's very rare that we kind of have that healthy balance. And so I just want to take a poll this morning. How many of you, no, I'm just joking. I'm not going to poll your self-esteem. That would be so mean. Those of you who have a low self-esteem are like, what? Oh my gosh, what is she doing? And the rest of you are like, think really highly of yourselves, are really bummed that you didn't get to participate in that little game. But that's the reality. And as I was writing this message, I was really convicted. I've read this passage hundreds of times. But this thing of self-evaluation that Paul says, listen, don't think of yourself better than you really are. That it's not you that provides the goodwill. It's not you that gives the good perspective. It's God. And I'll be honest, over the past couple of weeks, I've not been myself. I have been really struggling, to be honest with you. There's been a lot of drama in not my immediate family, but some family dynamics. And over the past couple of weeks, for me personally, I'm over 40, and so now that you're over 40, you got to do all these wacko things. And so I decided to go in for a mammogram because that's what you do when you're over 40. Yay! And so I went in a routine mammogram, and a couple days later, I received a letter that said, "Hey, we want to see you back." I thought, well, okay. And so I called a couple of friends. They're like, "Oh, that's so normal." And so I followed up with my doctor, and when I sat down, she proceeded to tell me that they had found a 3-centimeter mass. And that got my attention. And I wasn't too concerned because it was early on, but y'all, if you know my husband, I love him so much, but he's a little bit of a hypochondriac. And so when he saw that in print, I needed to scoop him up off the floor and be like, baby, don't go to worst case scenario. I think it's going to be okay. And so his response out of the purity of his heart is he wanted to share with a whole bunch of people. And I'm like, no. I'm like, it's going to come back clear. We're going to create all this drama. It's going to get on my nerves. I'm going to be upset with you. I'm like, it'll be fine. We don't have to share with anybody. And he just was relentless. I said, fine, go ahead. You can share with whoever you think needs to know, and I'll pray. And so he does, and I go to my follow-up appointment, and I have my first test of the day out of 2, and the test comes back all clear. And I go to my dark place. I text Justin from inside my little waiting room. He's in the other waiting room, and I'm like, I'm clear, I'm fine. And I'm thinking, now I got to go back to all those people and tell them I'm fine, and I just made this big drama, and I'm feeling embarrassed. And then I go to my second test. And my second test shows that I have 2 half-centimeter tumors and not just one big one. And then things started to downward spiral. I thought, this is really real. And thankfully, just to close that portion of the story, I met with a breast cancer specialist this week, and I'm clear, I'm fine, thank you, Jesus. But the reality of the condition of my heart through that was more embarrassing than me sharing the ups and downs of this experience. See, when we lean into God, when we know the heart of God, and we look into self-evaluation, it creates this litmus test to know your heart. And here's the truth about me over the past couple of weeks is my pride has kept me from wanting to share because I want people to think I'm a different person than I really am, that I don't have drama. But I've come to realize at 42 years old that drama is part of my family gene, and I don't know why. And it's been hard for a really long time. But what I love about God is when we lean into Jesus, that we can never experience the full transforming power of Jesus without self-evaluation. Paul says this isn't just about transforming your heart, it's about living life to its fullness. Do you know, where God says, you know what, that will probably never change in your life, but it's where I work. That it's in the hard parts of our heart where we feel like we will never change. God says, that's what I use as a catalyst to bring about heart transformation. Do you trust me? Are you willing to lean in? So God doesn't want to just transform you. He longs to use you to change the world. Look what it says in verse 4. Just as our bodies have many parts, and each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body. He's talking about the church. We are so many parts of one body, and we all belong to each other. In his grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. So if God has given you the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving others, serve them well. If you are a teacher, teach well. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. If it is giving, give generously. If God has given you leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. And if you have the gift of showing kindness to others, do it gladly. Notice who holds the power in this text. It doesn't say you. It doesn't say your circumstances. It doesn't say the things that you can never change about yourself. It says God has. Over and over again, God has. Not he might, or he could, or he will. It says God has equipped you. God has made you perfectly unique for a godly purpose. So stop trying to change. Stop comparing. Stop comparing the parts of your life that you know you can't change, and let God transform your heart and give you new eyes to see, a new perspective to see the areas you can't change as a catalyst for heart transformation. Listen, I am not any less dyslexic when I write or speak a message. That's Sada, right? If we've proven that. I wasn't any less dyslexic when I wrote a published book. But God has changed my heart. That the giftings he's given me aren't something to be put on a pedestal. They're an overflow of who God is. And when God uses me, when I know that he shouldn't, that's when my heart is transformed the most. When I know that I am the least and he uses me in spite of me, that's where heart transformation takes place. I don't have to find my identity in the comparison. My identity is found in who I am in him. It changes your heart, and then you realize there's something happens that it goes from this individualistic relationship with God, and you realize you're part of a bigger picture. You're part of the body of Christ. where he says, I want to use you to change the world through the church. And if we've learned anything this year, that it's been hard. We've had natural disaster after natural disaster after natural disaster. We've had shooting after shooting after shooting. And this week has been such a powerful reminder to me that God equips us. He has equipped us. As I watch my friends, Judd and Lori Wilhite, who pastor a very large church in the heart of Vegas. And I watch them, y'all, like, there is no 5 happy hops to healing your community when it's been wounded like this. And so the shootings took place, and they responded. The next night, they had a worship service. They didn't know if 5 people would show up. Thousands showed up. They showed up on the lawns because why? They were desperate for hope and healing. Judd and Lori were just obedient to lean in it, and then they didn't stop there. They brought people into the church, and then they released the church to go bring hope. And so pastoral staff, there were people who stayed on the phone for hours and hours to counsel people through their grief. Their pastors went to hospital after hospital to pray with victims and their families. I loved that on their day off, after an exhausting week, Judd and Lori decided to go to the actual place where the shooting happened, the actual hotel, and they had lunch there. Why? Because they have church members who still work there. They were making a statement that what Satan meant for harm in one room, that they were going to claim back this space. That they decided to lean in to know that they're not enough. They're not equipped to help this community, but the going and the doing, it changed their hearts forever. It's changing the heart of their community. You see, heart transformation takes place when the church becomes the launching pad to bring hope to a hurting world. Let me say that again. Heart transformation in your life and my life takes place when we, the church, become a launching pad to bring hope to a hurting world. Read what it says in verse 9. Don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Hate what is wrong, but hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Never be lazy, but work hard to serve the Lord enthusiastically. This is my favorite. Like, tattoo it on your eyelids. Put it down somewhere on a piece of paper. Rejoice in our confident hope. That our confident hope is found in Jesus. It goes on, verse 13. When God's people are in need, or go back, rejoice in confident hope. Be patient in trouble and keep on praying. When God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. You see, transformation happens in the living life with a confident hope. Will you realize that each one of you matter, and the parts that you keep focusing on that will never change, God said, I got you. I'll use that. You just lean into me, and I'm going to show you a life that is good and is of purpose. And so I wanted to close this morning inviting my friend Amy up. And I met Amy 2 years ago when we moved here. And we had a small amount of friends that we knew when we moved here, but our youngest son at the time really didn't know a lot of friends his age, and Amy and Miles reached out to us to get our son connected to play on a football team, and it just gave us this instant community. I'm going to scoot you over just a little bit, babe. About, like having friends. It was just this like instant connection. And so I've really loved watching Amy and her husband Miles, who is the head coach, really love on our family over the past couple of years. And a couple weeks ago, as one of the many hurricanes that have hit, the hardest that we've experienced on American soil thus far is Hurricane Harvey. And Amy, you received a phone call from your brother who said, hey, I'm headed to Houston. I don't have anybody to go with, but I'm going to go. And you responded with a yes. We have a picture of you and your brother, this is you in Houston. And I just want to ask you, for all of us, like, is this normally you? Do you just, like, you're a mom, 3 boys, wife, you work, like, do you normally just say, hey, I'm going to go hop in the car with my brother and go change the world for a couple days?
No, not at all. Those that know me know I'm very organized, and I can tell you what I'm doing at 5:05 today and at 5:12 tomorrow, and not hopping in a car and going to Texas is definitely not typical for either of us.
And so You say yes. Your husband's like, sure. And then you get in the truck. You kind of put an SOS out to say, I'm heading to Houston, and your friends go crazy. They fill up your truck. You're like overflowing with stuff. Now you're on your way on this long trip. What are you thinking on your way down?
We kind of were like in shock for the first couple hours. It was 17 hours, if I remember right, 16, 17 hours down. So the first couple hours we were quiet, trying to digest. Within an hour or two after that, we got into our dispatching with the group that we were there to go help with, realizing the calls we were overhearing. And so the dispatchers would call upon us and say, we need you in this zip code, we need you to take this, and we need this. I do recall one conversation was, hey, you need to be packing. And I'm like, what do I need to be packing? And my brother's like,
don't make me laugh. I'm going to get in trouble.
And I'm like, oh, okay, we got that. We got that. He has that. I don't have that. But
yes, so packing, like packing heat.
Yes.
Because
so it was not just, I'm an organized girl. I'm like, okay, we got everything packed. What, and then the dispatcher refers to packing, and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
I need that kind of packing.
It's loosely organized at this point. And so you guys get there, and I want to show you guys a picture. This first picture, that little blob you see is an actual car. It's a car under the water. And this next is a video, and we're not going to tell you what's going on in the video. You just take a look. This is Amy and her brother, which I assumed were in a boat. And then she pans the camera. And where is this, Amy?
This is Highway 10, so it would be like 70 for us going to Cincinnati. So it takes you into Houston, into Beaumont. And if you look on the right, that is the lane we should be in.
Okay.
We are in the other lane going the wrong way on I-10, try to get from the border of Louisiana into Texas.
So you were there, you were hearing dispatched that, I
heard children were drowning, 1-month-old baby couldn't get formula.
It's intense.
It was real. It was not.
Which can be overwhelming. I think all of us feel that. We watch the news cycle and we think, what can I do? I'm one person. And so what do you and your brother start doing?
So we then fit our boat in right here. We met up with these guys from Georgia. We literally go down the street where you see the stop sign, and we just start knocking on windows, knocking on doors. Dispatcher was telling us, they put a GPS on my phone, and then we had a dispatcher on the other phone. So they knew where we were at all times. If electricity was on, we were not to use anything to touch the home because we could get shocked. So we learned those things very quickly. I'm a mom. I know very little when it comes to getting in water that's 9 feet deep. And the smells and just the things floating about was definitely a sight that I had never, ever been involved in.
So you guys are there for 5 days. And on the first day in particular, you tell us about the couple that you met.
Yep. So actually right down that road, that's probably the most people we got out all up and down this. This is I-10 on the other side of my brother. So anyways, we started down this road. We approached a man standing in water well above his waist, waving for us. We got him out. We got him right onto I-10, and he got a ride into town. Later, I connected with him. We exchanged phone numbers, so I know he was safe. I'm weird that way. Like, I just don't want to leave you here on I-10, so we connected, and we still touch base with him. And then further down the road was a gentleman and his wife. She was 82. He was 84. He had just got out of the hospital. He had received 16, 18 pints of blood the day before the hurricane hit. So he was home. The lady had dementia. We got them out. Each rescue took us about 4 hours because we had to get their belongings. We were told not to take pets, but I took pets. I was that person, sorry. But I had no problem putting 4 dogs in the boat, even if we took 2 trips out.
And when you say pets, like you have a picture of a couple and they have their donkey because they couldn't stay anywhere with their animals.
Yes.
Like if you went to stay in a hotel that was open, you couldn't bring your animals. So there were literally people living on the side of the road with their animals.
I left a family. She had 4 children. Her dog just had puppies, so she had all these puppies, and she was living on I-10.
So I think all of us, sadly, we've seen so many pictures. We have to work really hard not to numb ourselves because it is so painful. How did this trip change your heart, specifically with your relationship with God?
So I'm embarrassed to say this in some aspects, but I kind of doubted prayer for a long time. I came and went in churches, and then when I met these lovely people, I've come and gone in this, and people have seen me around, and as you know, I'm busy. So my point is, I doubted it off and on, but during this journey, there were moments that, without crying, I've never prayed as much as I ever thought I would pray within 5 days. My brother and I, our boats collided. with another boat with the first gentleman you met under an underpass. And I remember literally holding on to these ropes that my brother had tied the cooler down with. Our boats we hit there's those big cylinders under the interstate that hold the road up, basically. Our boat slammed into that. Their boat went the other way. We literally stopped, and I remember praying out loud. So what I'm trying to say is I learned that the power of prayer really does work, and the one man is always there, always. And as the journey continued on, with probably the last picture you'll see is we've all been to Cracker Barrel, I hope. If not, go. I don't work there, but it's a good place. So after 4 or 5 days of no food, we had packaged food, so I don't want to think, it's not about us. But at that point, on a Saturday afternoon, we were due out to leave Sunday. But Saturday afternoon, we were told, hey, it's a recovery mission now. Do you want to stay aboard? And I said to my brother, we looked at each other, and I said, there's a difference between rescue, bringing in people and their families and their pets, than it is recovery. And I can't do that. I could have, but we were at the point where let's just go ahead and head home. So we decided to. We went about 2 hours into Louisiana, and we saw a Cracker Barrel, and we're like, oh my gosh, we've got to eat. So then it was about us. So we stopped. We hadn't showered in 4 days. We walk in. We're approaching Cracker Barrel. My brother's like, oh, I forgot my wallet. I'm like, yeah, that's what you always say. Never has his money. But no, not kidding. I said, I got mine. Let's go on in. We walk in. There's points to all this. So we're walking in. It's busy. It's crowded. You're going through the crowd of all the Cracker Barrel items. We pass a gentleman, and I said, Brian, that's that man from day one. He goes, no, it's not. I'm going to eat. And I said, all right, you go eat, but I'm going to go check out that man. So I go out. We're in the front of Cracker Barrel in rocking chairs, and I go up to him, and I said, hey, do I know you? And he goes, I sure hope so. And I was like, okay, you're a winner. If you like the way I look after 4 days, this is going to be a good conversation. So I sat next to him, and we chit-chatted, and it hit him. I mean, he's 84. It probably took him, 30 seconds.
So this was the man that you had rescued.
This was the man on day one.
And now you're 2 hours away in the middle of nowhere, and God brings you back to him to be able to have this moment before you head home.
And I promise you, it just so many signs and so many things took us there to meet the man that we rescued on day one, full circle. I know that there truly is a God that was with me that whole entire time.
That's cool. Can you guys give Amy a hand? It was pretty awesome. And this is what I love about Amy's story is she's not on a search and rescue team. She didn't have training. She didn't say that, Lord, I'll go if you do this. She just knew that God had put something in her heart to make a difference. And I want to leave you as the band comes up with this thought. That heart transformation lived out is knowing you belong, you've been equipped, and you've been made new. Like you belong to the family of God. He's not waiting or asking for you to be something that you're not. That he loves you, he values you, he has made you new. And what is he asking you to step into today? And maybe it begins here in your community. Maybe it begins being a part of our cafe team, our Hope City kids team. I've watched personally as a mom of 2 adopted children, our Hope City leaders change the heart of my children. That my kids have walked away singing songs about a Jesus that they had not heard of before. It's a powerful moment. If God is giving you the ability to teach, go teach. If God has given you the ability to be hospitable, go love on someone, one little step at a time. That powerful act of obedience to lean into God and to trust him that all the things that we think we can't change, God says, I've got you. It's I who change hearts. Let's pray.